All right. We are live for another NFL Sunday slate over on PrizePicks. We're going to be taking a look at some different player props, different prop categories available on PrizePicks. Well, they got a ton. They've got passing yards, rushing yards, receiving yards, receptions, pass touchdowns, rush touchdowns, receiving touchdowns, pass completions, interceptions. There's like almost a dozen different ways that you could play NFL. And that's not to mention, they also offer fantasy point props. So we're going to take a look at everything that you guys want to talk about today. So if you want to discuss any single stat player props, leave those in the chat. If you want to discuss, fantasy points props, we can dig into those. We're going to be using props.cash, which I already have preloaded here, and we can get an idea of the different trends for the different single stat player props. And then we'll also look at the Blitz by Derrick Henry. The Blitz is my favorite fantasy projection tool out there. They offer DraftKings, FanDuel. Of course, we're talking about PrizePicks, but the most similar projections to PrizePicks scoring system is going to be DraftKings. The biggest difference there, in case you didn't know, DraftKings, they give you that plus 3-point bonus on going over 100 rushing yards, receiving yards, and they give you a plus 3 bonus if you go over 300 passing yards. PrizePicks doesn't do that. So in case you were unfamiliar with how the scoring works over on PrizePicks, those are your key differences, really. Otherwise, it is exactly the same as DraftKings. I appreciate everybody who's tuning into the live stream this morning. A little light right now, 7 viewers. I'm sure more people will join us, people that are interested in the NFL. We got Anthony in here. What's up, Anthony? Michael in here again, definitely representing the Out of Bounds Discord community, Patreon community. So appreciate you guys tuning in. Zaddy's back again. Zaddy, you've been joining us for all of the NBA streams that we do every morning. So I appreciate you coming back in here. Alan says, smash the like. Definitely smash the like. If you're not subscribed yet and you haven't liked this stream yet, I appreciate all of those things that you guys do for me. I don't get paid a whole lot by YouTube to make these videos. I kind of just do it because, I got to embrace the hustle, got to embrace the grind. I'm trying to grow on here. And by you subscribing with notifications turned on and you liking these streams, you're helping to water these seeds that I'm planting by getting on these live streams every day. So hopefully one day, Lord willing, we have a big tree that grows from the seeds that are being planted now. Michael says, let's get this. Well, hopefully we can get this. So, yeah, definitely, guys. Appreciate you liking, subscribing, and all the fun things that they always ask you to do over on YouTube. So we'll let a few more people jump into the live stream, and then we'll get going here and take a look at some of these different player props. But while we wait, props.cash, if you're not a member yet, join props.cash today. You can use the affiliate link down in the description of this video. It's just $19.99 a month. It saves you a ton of time. So you got to kind of ask yourself, what's my time worth? Do I want to have a browser open with 10 different tabs and have to go back and forth between all these different sites? Or do I want to use just one site? Do I just want to use props.cash and save myself a lot of headache and a lot of work? Well, if you want to do it, now's a great time to do it. You can use the affiliate link down there below. It saves you a bunch of time. They've got NFL going. NBA is obviously in full swing. MLB starting to come to an end, but more sports are on the way according to my friends over at props.cash. So definitely a lot to be looking out for. Honey Badger LX, I appreciate the video. Honey Badger, I don't know if my guns are as big as your guns, but I'm going to flex with you. Let's hopefully get this money today. So let's take a look at some of these player prop trends. We'll start with passing yards. Obviously, the numbers are a lot different typically on PrizePicks when it comes to NFL and their single stat player props than they are over on most of the different sports books out there. So for instance, Baker Mayfield at 217.5. He's a little different here on PrizePicks. He's at 215.5, but we're going to take a look at him because it says he's got a 67% hit rate in terms of going over today's prop at 217.5. So let's go ahead and dig in. We're going to switch this from all games to just the Pittsburgh and Cleveland game. We'll click Baker Mayfield. Of course, we know Baker Mayfield's dealing with a plethora of injuries. Some thought that maybe he would be on the shelf for an extended period of time. It's kind of surprising that he's already back in the lineup. So he's dealing with, I believe, a rotator cuff injury, if I'm not mistaken. So been kind of a tough year for Baker Mayfield. So let's take a look at his season so far in a nutshell. We've got a view here of the last 10 games. I guess you could say. Started the season off strong against Kansas City, 321 passing yards, dips down to 213, 246, 155, 305, and finally 234. So you could see that he has gone over in 67% of the games that he's played so far this season. Now that's at the line with the line set at 217.5. Let's see if we can refresh this and set our custom line that matches exactly where PrizePicks is. Sometimes the little slider here on Prop.Cash can kind of be a pain in the you-know-what, but hopefully we get it going here. Little technical difficulties as we go live here on YouTube for all you lovely people out there. So let's click back in here, see if we can get this dialed in for Baker Mayfield. Kind of got a glimpse of his game logs, though. I could pull those up for you on PrizePicks while I get things set up here on Props.Cash. But yeah, so far a pretty good hit rate at the player prop line today of 217.5. So I don't know what's going on. There we go. There we go. There we go. Now we're cooking. Boom. 215.5, just like he is on PrizePicks. So a whole lot doesn't change. In his last 5 games, guys, he's averaging 230.6 passing yards per game. Over the course of the season, 245.7 passing yards per game. So he's taking on Pittsburgh today. We could take a look at previous game logs. Of course, right now there are none. And then you could look at the different lines across the industry. Minus 205 to go over 199.5 passing yards, and so on. Right now, not really seeing any juice on the over or the under on this passing yards prop for Baker Mayfield. So kind of an interesting one. If we scroll down here and look at how things kind of stack up for Baker Mayfield, Pittsburgh's defensive stats, they're 15th in terms of passing yards allowed per game. So they're not a tough matchup, but they're not easy. Kind of a middle of a pack type of defense here. But they are giving up 244.7 passing yards per game, which is good news for Baker Mayfield if you're looking to take the over on this one. So let's go ahead and see if we can get you a little bit of a projection here for Baker Mayfield according to the Blitz. Bear with me. Boom, boom. We're pulling it up right now for you. Let's refresh. See where they've got him on the Blitz by Derrick Henry. Again, fantastic projection tool. If you're not using a projection site yet, I would highly, highly recommend you go check out the Blitz by Derrick Henry. Of course, he's probably best known for the BAT, which is his MLB projection system, but he also does a fantastic job with his NFL projection system. Now, I will say things aren't looking good according to the Blitz. They've got him projected for 196 passing yards, which would put him under today's projection of 215.5. So although his hit rate is at 67%, it doesn't look so great when you dig into the projection. So take that for what you will. But enough about that one. Let's go ahead and talk about another one here. We've got one over that we've talked about. Maybe we talk about an under here, and one that's really sticking out like a sore thumb is going to be Justin Fields. He's at 187.5 passing yards according to Props.Cash, but much lower over on PrizePicks. They got him at 180.5. So let's dig into Justin Fields a little bit, and we'll take a look and see how his player prop is stacking up today, where the projections are, and so on and so forth. So we got to obviously move this down to where he's at on PrizePicks, which is 180.5. Not a whole lot changes when we do that. You can see that so far throughout 7 games, he's got a cover rate of just 29%. Now, a couple of these games early in the season, he was in there for limited work. He wasn't the full-time starter. So really, we should probably be looking at more of like the last 5-game view. This would probably be a more accurate depiction of how Justin Fields has done so far passing the football. But as you can see, in his last 5 games, he's covered just twice, guys, 40%. So not a very high hit rate. So yeah, definitely, if you have questions, leave them in the chat. I pinned a comment at the top of the channel. Any questions that you have, whether they be single stat player props, whether they be fantasy point props, leave them in the chat, and we will definitely get to them after we skim through various different player prop categories here. So yeah, not a high hit rate though for Justin Fields, averaging just 149.2 passing yards per game in his last 5 over the course of the season, though 116.6 passing yards per game. Now with his line set at 187.5, you can see that there's not really any action on the over or the under so far for Justin Fields. So not really seeing, you know, any strong money coming in one way or the other. Let's go ahead and look at the matchup so far. this season. San Francisco's defensive stats, they allow 205 passing yards per game. So that would be kind of a plus situation for Justin Fields. As far as passing yards per game ranked, though, they rank just 5th, meaning they are very greedy, very stingy, very tough against the opposing passers. So this could be a difficult matchup here for Justin Fields. You saw him struggle last week against another formidable defense. I think that was last week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Where he went for just 184 passing yards, barely going over 180.5. But that kind of game script was one where he was going to have to drop back and pass a lot to try and keep up with the Tampa Bay Bucs high-powered offense. Does he have to take that approach today? I don't know. I think this is a game where maybe we don't see as much passing from Justin Fields, and maybe it's more of a run-heavy game script. Maybe the game can stay close, and we don't see him drop back quite as much. But let's get you a projection on these Justin Fields passing yards according to The Blitz by Derek Carty, my man, DC. So we'll go find that game, San Francisco at Chicago. And as far as Justin Fields and his passing yards go, he's projected for about 173 passing yards today, which puts him under 180.5 guys. So not only does he not have a very good cover rate in terms of going over 180.5 passing yards, but he's also projected to go under today. So there you go. That could be a good way to go if you're looking to go under on anybody. Appreciate everybody joining the live stream. If you haven't liked this stream yet, please do so now. The last NBA stream that we did where we were trying to get back on top, back over 100 likes, you guys crushed it. I think we set an all-time high in terms of likes on any of these videos that I've posted. So thank you so much for that support. It means a lot to me. So now that we've talked some passing yards, why don't we move things over? We'll talk rushing yards, and I'll try to keep this short so we can start getting to some of your questions. So if you do have questions, please definitely leave them in the chat for me. I'm here to help you guys out. I'm here to make your lives easier, hopefully, and land on some good plays on today's NFL slate. All right, so we've got the rushing yard player props loaded up here on props.cash. We've got the likes of Jamal Williams at 36.5 rushing yards with a 71% hit rate. Currently a minus 120 to go over. We've got Derrick Henry up here at 104.5 rushing yards, 71% hit rate. Not really seeing any action on the over the under. We've got the likes of Ronald Jones, Mike Davis up there too, well over 50%. So all of these guys have pretty high hit rates. Let's talk about one that's probably going to be a popular one. And if you don't know who I'm talking about, we're going to go to King Henry, Derrick Henry, who is at 104.5 on props.cash. Let's find him over here on PrizePicks and see if he's up on the board. Maybe I passed him, but I'm not seeing him. Derrick Henry, not up for rushing yards yet? Come on. You're kidding. Let's do a search. Oh, there he is. 103.5. I guess I did skip through him. 103.5. So we've got him at 103.5 on PrizePicks, 104.5 on props.cash. So PrizePicks taking a little bit of a lower stance on these rushing yards for Derrick Henry. So let's switch it over. We'll go over to the running back position, and we'll filter out all the games. We'll just look at the Tennessee versus Indy matchup. Click Derrick Henry's name. This is how easy it is to use props.cash if you're not already using it. So fantastic tool. Saves you a lot of time. So we've got the rushing yards selected here. Now you can see a lot of green on Derrick Henry's chart here, which is great. 71% hit rate like we talked about before, and that's at 104.5. If we want, we can dial this down to 103.5. Well, something just happened here with our little prop slider. We're having a little bit of difficulty. Maybe they're updating stuff in real time. Let's dig back in here and see if we could pick up where we left off. But yeah, if you look at his last 5 games, guys, he's went over this prop in 4 out of 5. So that alone should tell you that going over on Derrick Henry's rushing yards is never a bad idea. Even against Kansas City, where he should have been game scripted out, he ended up with 86 yards. Of course, that doesn't get the job done on today's rushing yard prop, but still a very strong performance there for Derrick Henry. So we dial this into 103.5. And you can see in his last 5, 125.8 rushing yards per game. Over the course of the season, 124.1 rushing yards per game. And if we look at last year's matchup against the Colts, 113 rushing yards against the Colts. So all things are pointing to the over here for Derrick Henry in this one. 71% hit rate. Gotta love that. Now let's look at the matchup here. So we look at the Indianapolis Colts and their defensive stats. They're in terms of rushing, they're allowing 111 rushing yards per game, which obviously would put Derrick Henry in a good spot to go over 103.5. They rank just 14th against the run in terms of yards per game allowed to opposing running backs. So not a very difficult matchup, not the easiest matchup either. Kind of a middle of the pack, average matchup here for Derrick Henry. So I think things are looking pretty darn good for him in this one. As you can see, bell cow running back, he's doing it all for the Titans, getting plenty of carries per game. We don't have to worry about that, averaging about 28 carries in his last few games. And then last year against the Colts, in that one game that we looked at, he did carry the ball exactly 28 times. So gotta love what you're seeing here for Derrick Henry today. You could always go fantasy points if you feel like maybe he finds the end zone once or twice in this matchup. Maybe he hauls in a couple of catches. Going over on his fantasy points could be a good way to go here too. But let's wrap it up here for Derrick Henry. We'll get you a prop, or a projection for this prop rather. Tennessee versus Indianapolis. Let's see where the blitz has Derrick Henry going today in terms of rushing yards. They got him at 97 rushing yards. So they're actually thinking that maybe he goes under today's prop of 103.5, but it's really hard to bet against this guy and take the under when you consider everything that we've looked at so far. I really just don't see that the Colts getting out to some kind of crazy big lead. I think this game stays close where Tennessee can continue to deploy Derrick Henry in this run game, and I like it. I don't mind it. What's going on, Jeff? Nice to have you back into the live stream. Appreciate all you guys that are filing in here and joining me this morning. Hopefully some of this research helps you land on some good plays today. That's the goal here, to help you uncover some good plays. I had a pretty good play last night, last minute NBA play I threw in. Under on Chris Paul, 16.5 points, and then I went under on Colin Sexton's fantasy points. Sexton didn't even come close to covering his particular fantasy point prop, and then Chris Paul, I got really, really nervous because he ended up with 16 points. One more shot would have went in for Chris Paul, we would have been in trouble, but we caught a break, thank God, because I hate losing those little nail biters. I hate whenever I take an under and it goes over by like 1 or something like that. Now, a guy that has a low hit rate on today's player prop is DeAndre Swift. Now, I've seen in a lot of circles that they expect DeAndre Swift to have a big game from a fantasy point perspective. So if you play on one of those salary cap based daily fantasy sites like DK or FD, well, DeAndre Swift's looking like a good value based on his price. So there's a chance that maybe, despite his low hit rate, that he ends up having a big day today. But at 50.5 on props.cash, 46.5 over on PrizePicks, let's look at DeAndre Swift and see what's crack-a-lacking with him. He's taking on my Philadelphia Eagles today, which, our defense has been all right. Our team overall, young, not great, a little bit of a disappointment so far. But we're looking to pick up a win today against a soft opponent in the Detroit Lions. I think we get it done and beat Detroit. So I got some faith in Jalen Hurts today. I think he has a good game against an easy matchup against the Detroit Lions. So I'm liking the outlook here for the Philadelphia Eagles against this Lions team. Now, for whatever reason, we're not able to pull up anything for DeAndre Swift right now, or any of the Philadelphia and Detroit guys. But if we look at his game logs, you can see in his last handful of games, guys, at 46.5 rushing yards, he's went over once, barely, at 47. And that was against Baltimore, pretty tough defense. 51 against Minnesota, going over by just a few yards there. And then 48 in his last game against the LA Rams, barely going over the 46.5 mark. So it's not like he's like crushing 46.5 rushing yards, right? It's not like he's going for 80 yards or anything like that. He's just barely getting over the hump. So this is going to be one of those nail biter type of props, I think, when it comes to DeAndre Swift. So I'd be a little careful with this one. Let's try and get you a projection. Maybe that'll help clarify things and which way you should be going if you're looking to take DeAndre Swift today and his rushing yard prop. Philadelphia at Detroit. They've got him projected for 52 rushing yards. So there you go. Not big margins here on the overs or the unders for DeAndre Swift. This is going to be one where if you want to sweat today, maybe burn a few calories sweating a player prop, this might be the prop for you to sweat it out. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and look at some receiving yard props. So we'll flip this from running back over to wide receiver and tight end. And we'll go over to the receiving yard category. There's some guys that are projected to have some monster games today. Let's see what stands out. Jerry Jeudy, he's at 41.5 receiving yards, 100% hit rate. He's just making his return after being on the injury reserve list for quite some time. So I'm not looking to really go to Jerry Jeudy yet. Kind of want to see how things play out. I know Teddy Bridgewater's a really popular play today across the daily fantasy sports and prop betting scene. I don't know if I trust Teddy Bridgewater. I'm just being honest with you. But let's look at Deontay Johnson because he is a guy that seemed to project really well today. He was a name that I considered clicking on in some of my lineups today. So let's go ahead and find DJ if he's up on the PrizePicks board. I've had a terrible time finding players today on PrizePicks. There he is. So he's at 65.5. They take on the Cleveland Browns, and you can see at 65.5 receiving yards, the dude's been crushing. His last 4 games, he's actually covered 65.5 receiving yards with no problem. So it seems like PrizePicks rather is taking sort of a low road here on Deontay Johnson at 65.5. So let's click into the wide receiver tight end category on props.cash. We'll go pull up Deontay Johnson. Deontay Johnson's a Tampa guy. He grew up here in Tampa where I'm from. So it's cool to see him have the success that he's having. He played his high school ball here in the Tampa Bay area. So if we dial this down to 65.5 to match where he's at on PrizePicks in his last few games here, you can see that he's gone over 4 out of 5. That's an 80% hit rate. Gotta love an 80% hit rate staring you in the face. And in those last 5 games, he's averaged 75.2 receiving yards per game. So things are looking good here for Deontay Johnson. No previous matchups to look at, unfortunately, on props.cash against Cleveland from last year. But if we scroll down here, we can get an idea at how well Cleveland does against the passing game. So they're allowing just 215 passing yards per game. That gives them a passing yards per game rank of 6. So they're pretty stingy in terms of passing yards allowed, not giving up a ton. But I'm not too worried about that because in terms of offensive snaps, he's getting a ton of snaps for the Pittsburgh Steelers. With Juju Smith-Schuster out of the picture, it's really Deontay Johnson as probably the lead guy with Chase Claypool right behind him. So I'm liking the way things are looking for DJ. You can see he gets a ton of targets, 10, 12, 13, and 13. Obviously, targets are a wide receiver's best friend. You're going to want a guy who's getting peppered with targets because that's like more opportunities for him to catch the football, rack up yards, and so on and so forth. So pretty good here. Looking great here for Deontay Johnson, I think, so far in terms of going over on his prop. Let's go ahead and pull up a projection for you. Thank you guys who are just joining me in the chat. Definitely leave a like on this stream, or if you're joining me for the first time and you've never been here before, make sure you're subscribed. Subscribing to the channel really helps me out. Turn on notifications. I do these live streams for NBA daily around 11 a.m. Eastern time. So if you're interested in NBA action, I'm doing that Monday through Friday for you guys, helping you out with the aid and the assist of props.cash. So I've got the blitz pulled up over here on the side. I'm going to pull up the receiving yards for Deontay Johnson, and he's right there in the neck of the woods of like 65 receiving yards. He's actually at 63 receiving yards today. So really close to 65.5, slightly under, but I think things are looking pretty good here in terms of how they've been trending for Deontay Johnson. I think he can get it done against this Cleveland Browns team. So appreciate you. Let's go ahead and move over to a different player prop here. We've looked at an over for receiving yards. Let's take a look at some of the trends and guys who have been going under today. Now, Robbie Anderson has been probably one of the more frustrating receivers in terms of fantasy football this year. His line's currently at 49.5 according to props.cash, but they've got him at 45.5 over on PrizePicks. If we pull up his player card here, you can see that against Houston, just 8 receiving yards. Terrible game. I almost had that many receiving yards, and I was sitting at home on my couch. He comes back with 46, which is just enough to cover 45.5, 30, 11, and 14. Look, I'm not going to beat around the bush here. If you've been watching Sam Darnold over the last few weeks compared to where he was over the last few weeks to start the season, rather, it's a totally different guy. He had great success in the first few games this season. Last few games, not so hot. So I can understand why you wouldn't feel too optimistic about going over on Robbie Anderson. So we know he's got a pretty terrible hit rate in terms of covering this prop. Let's go ahead and look at it a little bit closer. Let's put it under the microscope, under the lens, and see how he can possibly do against what I would say is a pretty favorable matchup against the Atlanta Falcons today. So we'll take this line from 48.5, we'll bump it down to the 45.5 where he's at over on PrizePicks, so we get apples to apples. And you can see that game against Dallas lights up green when we slide it down to 45.5, adding another hit to his game log. So he's hit just twice, and in those games, 57 yards and 46 yards. So he's not blowing away today's prop of 45.5, even when he is hitting. Overall, in his first 7 games, just 2 for 7, guys, 29%. Not a very good hit rate. If you wanted to go under here, I wouldn't be mad at you. He's averaging just 21.8 receiving yards per game in his last 5 games, 29.1 receiving yards per game over the course of the season. But at 48.5 receiving yards, which is a bit higher than where he's at on PrizePicks, people are smashing the over here, minus 120. That's where the money's coming in. We don't have game logs to look at from last year against Atlanta. Maybe they're just not loaded in there on props.cash. But what we can do is look at this matchup against the Falcons, because it is a soft one. They're allowing 250.5 passing yards per game to opposing teams. So that's a good number. And then they're just 19th in terms of yards per game allowed, passing yards per game allowed to opposing teams. So they're not a very difficult defense here. This is kind of a friendlier matchup for Robbie Anderson. Now he's getting a healthy amount of snaps. You can see he's floating around 60 snaps per game in his last 5 games. So that's not terrible. And then in terms of targets, the targets are actually there for Robbie Anderson, which is the most frustrating part, is because over the last 4 games here, 11, 7, 11, 9, it's not like he's not seeing the football. The football's coming his way. He's just not securing them. I don't know if that's a case of the dropsies. I don't know if that's just tough defense. I don't know if the balls aren't being put in the right place for him. Maybe it's a Sam Darnold issue, but the targets are there for this guy, and everybody's been waiting week after week. When is it going to be the Robbie Anderson breakout game? If there ever was a situation where it could be a Robbie Anderson breakout game, this might be the one. I mean, I know it seems like we say that every week, but at some point, the dude's got to break out. So let's go ahead and hit you with a projection for his receiving yards. Again, we're pulling these projections from the Blitz by Derek Carty. So let's go ahead and do that now. Carolina versus Atlanta. We've got the wide receivers pulled up, and then we're going to go to receiving yards. They've got Robbie Anderson at 65 receiving yards today. So the Blitz projection system has him about 20 yards higher than where he's at over on PrizePicks. It's going to take a little bit of guts, going to take a little bit of courage, but this could be a situation where you click the over and it works out for you, as Robbie Anderson is due, guys. He's just due. But if you want to go under, I can't blame you there. So maybe if the information's too conflicting, you just fade it altogether. You just fade the whole thing and don't even touch it. What's up, Dre? Thanks for joining the live stream. Thank you to all 43 of you who are currently tuned in. If you haven't liked the video yet, listen, I'm going to keep hitting that nail on the head. I'm going to keep saying, like this video, help a brother out. I'm just out here trying to help you guys out and land on some good player prop picks today over on the NFL slate. So we talked receiving yards, we talked passing yards, we talked rushing yards. Let's go ahead and take some of your questions, guys. I don't want to be on here for, an hour or more today. So let's go to the chat. I've hit you with a few props from all the different categories. So let me go and check out the chat here and see what you guys are talking about. DeAndre Swift season says he thinks it's Swift season. Well, what a coincidence. DeAndre Swift season like Swift season. I can't blame you there. Jamal Williams is inactive. Okay, that's a big piece of news. That's going to mean all the DeAndre Swift you could possibly want. So I'm definitely playing him today in some of my fantasy lineups. Michael says, I like his rushing prop at 7.5. Not sure who he's talking about. Maybe it was Maybe it was like Bridgewater or one of the quarterbacks or something that we had talked about. Baker Mayfield, maybe he was talking about at 7.5 rushing yards. 7.5 rushing yards, that seems like a pretty low number. Yeah, hit. So he's hit in like 5 straight games. Maybe he takes it a little easy, doesn't want to take any big hits, speaking of hits today, and try to protect that shoulder. Maybe he scrambles less. I don't know. But against Pittsburgh, yeah, I mean, that could possibly be a way to go. Super Size Senpai says, been going back and forth on starting either Javonte Williams or Antonio Gibson. I'm guessing you're talking about starting him in your fantasy league, so maybe I can help you out with that. Let's go ahead and look at the projections for both players. Javonte Williams, obviously Denver Broncos running back. He's in a bit of a timeshare with Melvin Gordon. They've been kind of splitting the work, even though I think Javante's probably going to take that job at some point and be that lead guy. Melvin Gordon's not going anywhere unless there's an injury. And then you got Antonio Gibson, who's been dealing with that nagging shin injury. He's still, fine. I mean, they took him off the injury report. I don't think the shin injury is going to be something that holds him back or limits him in any way. So not too worried about either guy. But Washington versus Denver, they're actually facing each other today. In terms of fantasy points projections for both players, Antonio Gibson, I've got him at 14.1 fantasy points. And then I've got Javonte Williams at 11.2. So edge goes to Antonio Gibson. That's based on DraftKings scoring. So that's like a point per reception projection for you, if that helps you out. Supersize Senpai says Gibson would be the natural choice, but his last 2 weeks have been horrible. JD McKissick has been eating into the ball time, hasn't had 3 catches since first week, and he has the nagging shin injury. Well, that's funny. I didn't even read that, but yes, he has been dealing with a nagging shin injury. Let's see. Gibson still has the highest potential, but Javonte has been fairly steady. Yeah. Remy says, I'm liking Deebo Samuel over on receptions and yards. So he's expecting a big game for Deebo Samuel today. So let's take a look at Deebo, because he has been one of the studs, the absolute stars, I would say, of this season. Kind of a breakout season for Deebo. We knew the talent was there. We'd seen glimpses of it. But I think so far this season, he's been a guy who has been the most surprising. So Deebo's at 66.5 receiving yards. You could see it according to his game logs here, 93, then drops down to 52, comes back with 156, 58, and then 100. So he's facing the Chicago Bears today. Let's pull him up here on props.cash and see what we can find on Deebo Samuel. San Francisco at Chicago. We've got the receiving yards pulled up. Deebo. There he is, 69.5 over on props.cash. Of course, we're going to slide this thing down because we get a better projection for him over on PrizePicks at 66.5. So in his last 5 games, almost 92 receiving yards per game. Over the course of the season, 108 receiving yards per game. Of course, there's a couple of big performances in his game log that's really pumping that number up. This 189 receiving yard game against the Detroit Lions, obviously 156 yards against Seattle. Those are really boosting those averages up to where they are. 100 against the Colts in his last game. Versus Chicago last season, no previous game logs to look at. Not really seeing any action at 69.5 receiving yards. No action going either way, over or under. But if we look at this matchup here against Chicago allowing 220, we'll round up, 220 passing yards per game. That's an 8th overall passing yards per game rank. So it could be a little bit of a difficult matchup here for Deebo Samuel. Let's look at his snaps. He's getting plenty of snaps over 70, 76, 65, 56, plenty of snaps for him, probably leading the team in snaps if I were to guess. Targets are also off the charts, 12, 8, 10, 12, 9, 11, averaging 10 targets. You love to see double-digit targets for a wide receiver, especially if you're targeting the over. And you can see on those targets in terms of his receptions, 9 receptions, 6 receptions, 5, 8, 3, and 7. So you mentioned liking both his receiving yards and his receptions today. Let's go to his receptions and take a look. Not pulling up for me here on PrizePicks. Let's scroll down. I don't know. I'm not seeing him up on the PrizePicks board for reception. So Maybe you could get his receptions on some other site, but right now on PrizePicks, I'm not seeing any receptions here for Deebo Samuel, unless I'm just totally missing it. But hopefully that gives you an idea of how many like receptions that he's had in his last few games. And we'll get you a projection here to cap things off. According to The Blitz by Derek Carty, let's dial this game up here. San Francisco versus Chicago. We're going to be looking at the receiving yards for Deebo Samuel. They've got him at 77 receiving yards, which would be a pretty good edge here against the PrizePicks number of receiving yards. I think he was at 66.5. And then in terms of receptions, 5.6, putting him really close to 6 receptions. So if you're playing on a site where they have Deebo Samuel's receptions available, feel good about taking the over at 5 or 5.5. Let's see what else we got in the chat, though. Appreciate that one about Deebo Samuel. Man, I wish things were going a little smoother here on stream, but that's all right. Zebo says, I might have to go King Henry over 103.5. I can't blame you there. No Calvin Ridley today for Atlanta, so I would say fire up Cordero Patterson. I think that's a good play. Jeff says, what to do, CJ? Ready to make some money? What's up, Jeff? Yes, always ready to make some money today on PrizePicks. DeAndre Swift season again says Jamal isn't playing today. Got to look at Swift's fantasy points. So DeAndre Swift fantasy points, I told you guys, he looks like a good play across the DFS industry today. Got to love some DeAndre Swift. James says Calvin Ridley's acting like a B word. Woo. Shade thrown Calvin Ridley's way. But yeah, I got him in a couple of my fantasy leagues. Unfortunately, not playing today, so that stinks. Remy says, I went with Deontay Johnson over for my 15 times payout over on PrizePicks. It's a Hail Mary. Absolutely a Hail Mary on that one. James says, if I were y'all, I would take Ezekiel Elliott for the over on 0.5 touchdowns. So let's look at that real quick. Zeke, Dallas Cowboys. Are we talking rushing touchdowns? He's up here at 0.5 for rushing touchdowns. You can see in his game log here, has done a great job of finding the end zone on the ground. 4 out of his last 5 games, he's converted on a 0.5 rushing touchdown prop. I wish it was an anytime touchdown, meaning it could be a receiving or rushing touchdown, but not mad at it for the rushing touchdown over. That's a good one. Good for pointing that one out. Thanks, James. Mike White under pass completions. Okay, yeah, no Zach Wilson today, so Mike White, don't know much about the kid, don't know much about him whatsoever, but here he is. 20 pass completions against New England last week. He's at 19 today facing the Cincinnati Bengals. So he's saying go under on Mike White's passing completions. So that could be a good way to go as well. What else do we have here? Jeff says CJ Uzoma's receiving yards and catches both looking good for the over. I could see this hitting. I would need to see Uzoma get there in terms of receiving yards and receptions in the first half, because I think Cincinnati is going to be playing from ahead, playing with a lead in this game. So if Uzoma gets there, he's going to have to get there pretty quickly, I would say in the first half, hopefully. But yeah, he's been playing some very good football for the Cincinnati Bengals. Obviously, soft matchup against the New York Jets. Let's take a look at him. He's at 22.5 on props.cash. Let's move him down to 21.5 where he is on PrizePicks. And I guess they're adding more props to the board as we speak. Things are flipping out here. In his last 7 games, just covering 3 out of 7. That's just a 43% cover rate. So not a fantastic cover rate. This is going to be one of those ones where it could be a little bit volatile, but he is averaging 43.4 receiving yards per game over his last 5. But, mostly pumped up here by this 95 receiving yard performance, 91 receiving yard performance against Baltimore. So it's been feast or famine for CJ, a fellow CJ like myself. So you got to be careful with this one. It's not one that I feel great about. It is seeing some action on the over, though, minus 120 at 22.5 receiving yards on the over. So we're actually getting a little bit of value at 21.5. So if people are liking the over at 22.5, the 21.5 is even sweeter. Better odds for us to see him hit this particular prop. Now, as far as the Jets defense goes, 275 passing yards per game allowed. That's 25th in the NFL in terms of passing yards allowed per game. So they're one of the most generous defenses in passing yards allowed per game. So yeah, I think this could be a good way to go here for Uzoma. Thanks for pointing that one out. Appreciate you. What else do we have here? Michael says he loves Deontay's receiving yards today. Yeah, I think that's a good way to go. It's looking like a good one. He's hitting it at a pretty high rate. And like I said, no Juju Smith-Schuster, so even better, right? Hopefully for Deontay Johnson. Jeff says, I stay far away from Robbie Anderson. DJ Moore is the only Carolina receiver I trust. I don't blame you there. And it's even hard to trust him these days with the way Sam Darnold's been playing lately. Tonka Stubbs says, I like Joe Burrow's passing yards. Yes, I think we just kind of hit on that by talking about Uzoma. I think that Joe Burrow makes for a good passing yard play. Jamar Chase on receiving yards. Yep. If Cincinnati can get it done in the first half, ideally that would be great because I think things will slow down in terms of passing, how often that they're passing in the second half. I think they turn things over to Joe Mixon and they kind of lean on him to take them home. What else? Najee Harris over 18 fantasy points. I believe he has a 100% hit rate so far. Let's take a quick peek at fantasy props. We haven't looked at a whole lot of them today. We'll find Najee Harris here. He is at 18 right now against the Cleveland Browns. And if you look at his game logs, he has hit in his last 5 100% of the time. So a 100% hit rate on Najee Harris. Can he keep it going today? Hopefully he can. Let's see if I can pull up a projection for you guys on this prop. According to the Blitz, we're using DraftKings projections. Obviously, DraftKings is not exactly like PrizePicks, but most like PrizePicks. So on the fantasy point prop for Najee Harris, they got him going for 20.2 fantasy points today, putting him over this 18 fantasy point projection by 2.2 points. So yeah, that could be a good way to go. Keep going to Najee Harris. What else do we have here? Derrick Henry. Duran says Derrick Henry over 0.5 touchdowns. Always a good look. You can always go over Derrick Henry on touchdowns. He is an absolute beast. When he gets around the goal line, hard to stop this guy. Let's look and see if they have him at just any kind of touchdown or if it's just rushing touchdown. It looks like it's probably going to be rushing touchdown. Yep. So we pull up his game log. He gets them in bunches typically. You see in the Buffalo game, Jacksonville game, 3 rushing touchdowns in one game. But then he's got a couple of games where there's 0. One was against Indianapolis with 0 at September 26th. And then against Kansas City last week, did not find the end zone. So has some good games sandwiched in between some bad ones. But I think Derrick Henry is always a pretty good bet to go over 0.5 rushing touchdowns. Let's see if I can get you a projection on that number. Maybe it'll help you out a little bit. We'll go over here to the Blitz. We'll pull up the rushing touchdown projection, and he's at 0.82 projected rushing touchdowns. So you compare that to the 0.5 on PrizePicks. I think 0.82 is a pretty good number. Anytime you get a guy at 0.8 or higher in terms of projected rushing touchdowns, you take the over. So there you go on that Derrick Henry over rushing touchdown. Kenneth Gainwell over 3 reception looks good as well as Boston Scott over 29.5 rushing yards. Yeah, without Miles Sanders in the lineup as an Eagles fan, it's going to be interesting to see how Nick Sirianni and their offense balances out the touches, the snaps for those 2 running backs. Kenneth Gainwell, Boston Scott. Obviously, in previous seasons, Boston Scott's been a fantastic little running back for us, the Eagles. But Kenneth Gainwell came on really strong in training camp, had a very strong preseason, and has kind of solidified himself as that second running back behind Miles Sanders. So I expect him to kind of be the running back 1A, or running back 1 or running back A in this situation, and Boston Scott kind of playing that B role or that number 2 running back for the Philadelphia Eagles. But we gotta see a little bit more. Not enough of a sample size for me to get a clear read on who kind of comes out ahead there in terms of snaps and touches and things like that. But a few more minutes here, guys. I'm going to jump off. We'll try to keep it a little shorter than we do on our NBA ones. Just wanted to get on here and hopefully provide you guys with some value. So if you are getting value from this, definitely hit a like on that for me. Make sure you're subscribed if you haven't yet. And, hopefully you'll pull out some valuable information from this. Jeff says that he loves playing quarterbacks first half yards. I've hit my 5-pick flex the past 2 weeks. Well, definitely drop that one in Discord if you would like to share, Jeff, because if you're doing that well on quarterback passing yard props for first half, I want in on that. Zach says Pollard over rushing yards. Tony Pollard over rushing yards. Is that who we're talking about? Pollard's at 36.5 rushing yards, taking on the Minnesota Vikings. If we look at his game logs, looking very strong here. 109 versus the Chargers, 60 versus Philly, 67 versus Carolina, 75 versus the Giants, and 41 versus New England. So yeah, I think Tony Pollard over rushing yards could be a good way to go. Let's dial it up here on props.cash as we start to bring things to a close for today's NFL live stream. If you have any last minute props that you want me to look into real quick for you, I can definitely do that, but it's getting close to kickoff time. It's 12:15 over here where I live. We got 45 minutes for me to jump off here, go lock in some entries, and hopefully win some cash. But he's at 42.5 on a lot of sports books, it looks like. Just 36.5 over on PrizePicks. Having some issues this morning with props.cash. Let's go ahead and reload, try to dial it back in here, and get you an idea of how Tony Pollard should stack up against this matchup. And while that's loading, I can pull up a projection here for Tony Pollard and those rushing yards and see where things are looking for Dallas at Minnesota. So we're going to go find Tony Pollard. In terms of rushing yards, they've got him at 36 rushing yards according to the Blitz, which puts him really, really close, obviously at 36.5. I'd probably lean toward the over with the high hit rate that we've seen so far from Pollard. But yeah, I think going over on Tony Pollard makes a lot of sense. Sorry we're having so many little glitchy issues here. It's kind of out of my control, unfortunately. Maybe there's some updates going on behind the scenes at props.cash, but typically when we do these NBA live streams, things are a little bit smoother. But yeah, over his last 5 games, guys, a 100% cover rate for Tony Pollard. If you look at his last 6 games, a 83% hit rate, hitting in 5 out of his last 6. No previous game logs against Minnesota from last season to look at, but 70.4 yards per game average on his rushing yards, 61 over the course of the season. Now at 42.5 rushing yards, they got him as a minus 120 to go under, but of course, we're talking PrizePicks at 36.5, so that's a much softer number. I'd imagine that the money would be coming in on the over there. If you look at Minnesota in terms of rushing yards per game allowed, 128, which gives them just a 26th rank. Very soft matchup here for Tony Pollard. So if you wanted to go over on his rushing yards, I ain't mad at you. Even though he's projected for 36 over on the Blitz, I still think the over is a good way to go. Projections aren't always right. How do you like Pitts since the Ridley scratch? Yeah, I think Pitts gets a bump up. I think Cordero Patterson gets a bump up. Mike Davis, I'd probably stay away from Mike Davis. Patterson outsnapped Davis last week. He's been getting more reps in practice. So I think Patterson over Davis for me. In terms of Kyle Pitts, yeah, I think that's a good way to go. He's been really coming on strong in his rookie year. So like some Kyle Pitts today for sure. Josh Allen over 2.5 passing touchdowns. I think this is going to be a tricky one. Could he do it? Absolutely. We know Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills have been a red hot offense this season. If you look at his game logs here, not a, great hit rate, but most of the time he's hitting, at least in his last 5, he's got 3, falls short here with just 2, 4 against Washington, and then 2 in a previous matchup against Miami. So I'd be careful with this one. Let me see if I can pull up a projection. Maybe that will help you out in terms of making that decision on Josh Allen and his passing touchdowns. Let's see if he's over or under, projected to go over or under those 2.5 passing touchdowns. Because this could be one of those ones where he throws 2 touchdowns and then they're up, and have a big lead, and then they kind of turn things over to the run game. I've got him projected for 2.28 passing touchdowns today, which would put him under, ever so slightly, under 2.5. So closer to 2 touchdowns than 3 today, if that helps you out. Rounding things out here, we'll take this last few questions from chat. How about Jalen Hurts over on rushing yards at 42.5? Detroit had problems with Lamar earlier this year. Yeah, I like Jalen Hurts a lot today. I think he makes a lot of sense. I think this matchup against the Detroit Lions is a very easy one, soft one, friendly one, however you want to phrase it. I think Jalen Hurts has a good opportunity here to have a big game. So he's at 42.5 rushing yards. He's went over in 1, 2, 3 out of his last 5 games. I'll pull up a projection for you and kind of give you an idea where they have him projected in terms of rushing yards today against this Detroit Lions team. We move it over. He's projected for 40 rushing yards. So you're going to be cutting it close. This is projected to be one of those ones that you might end up sweating a little bit on Jalen Hurts. So I'm probably leaning toward the over, though. I think Jalen Hurts has a good opportunity here against the Lions. What else do we got here, guys? Thank you so much for all the questions. Thank you, everybody who dropped in this morning, and hopefully everything helps you out here. Loving Carter's receptions. Yeah, Michael Carter, if you're talking about the New York Jets, Michael Carter, he's been like low-key getting more and more involved for the New York Jets and their offense. Of course, I think they're going to be without Corey Davis today. So Michael Carter, if he's at like 1.5 or 2, oh, they bumped him up to 3. Ooh. This gets a little tougher for me. If you're talking about Michael Carter, I'm not sure which Carter you mean, but his last 2 games, though, 3 receptions and 8 receptions. I was liking him better, hoping that he was closer to like 1.5 or 2 receptions. 3 might be a little dicey for me on Michael Carter against Cincinnati, but I do expect this to be a pass-heavy game script for the New York Jets. They're going to be trailing against the Cincinnati Bengals if things work out the way that I think they will. So don't hate that one, but it could be a push. Zach says, if I can look at Cordero Patterson over 34.5 receiving yards, I think that is a good way to go. Cordero Patterson, easy for me to say, over receiving yards with the Calvin Ridley news. I think he can definitely hit 34.5 or more receiving yards. 58, 82, 82, and 60. You could see 4 out of his last 5 games he's went over. Just 1 receiving yard against the Miami Dolphins, but in that one, Calvin Ridley was active, so that's worth pointing out. So with him out of the lineup, you're looking at probably around 10 targets that have to go somewhere, right? They have to be distributed somewhere, and I expect them to be the Cordero Patterson to be the beneficiary of that lack of Calvin Ridley being in the lineup. So let me see if I can pull up a projection for you in terms of receiving yards for Patterson to help you out. But yeah, with Ridley being out, I would expect Patterson to be up there in terms of receiving yards. And I've got him projected at 35 receiving yards. Let me refresh this. That might be an old number without the Calvin Ridley news. Let me see if I get a better number for you. Because with Ridley out, yeah, I mean, like I said, those targets have to go somewhere. So I would expect Pitts to be a beneficiary. I would expect Patterson to be a beneficiary. Let's see if things updated here. I just refreshed the Blitz projection system. Sorry, guys. Bear with me. Yeah, he's now at 46 receiving yards. So it has updated. It was at 35, I think I said. But anyway, now it's at 46. So the over on Patterson looks like a good way to go. I think that makes a whole lot of sense. Jermaine says, I like Matthew Stafford over fantasy score and Joe Burrow. Yeah, I think a lot of Matthew Stafford makes sense. Joe Burrow, I think, makes a lot of sense as well. We don't talk a whole lot of fantasy score typically on these streams, but Stafford and Burrow both should have pretty good games. I would like it more if like Burrow was involved in a game where it could be a shootout, but I just don't see it being one of those types of games. But look at what Joe Burrow's done in his last handful of games here, guys. 18.5 comes a little bit short of 19, but then you got 22, 20, 23, 27. So he's been on fire. So the over on Joe Burrow is definitely the way to look. You had mentioned Matthew Stafford. Where's he at today? 21. I believe I had him going over his projection today too. So he's went over in 3 out of his last 5 games. Came really close against the Cardinals with 20.3. But yeah, I think I had Matthew Stafford going over, if I remember correctly from this morning. The Blitz had him going over. So T-Baby15, you want to join my Discord? Well, just click the link in the description below. I will say that most of the action goes down in the private channels of the Discord. Private channels are available to Patreon members. If you're not already a part of a community where, you know, you're talking prize picks, player props, fantasy sports, and stuff like that, you could definitely join my Patreon group. It's just $20 a month. Supports me as a content creator, allows me to get on here on stream, help you guys out, and do more of these types of videos for you. So, and I give back as much as I can by providing helpful cheat sheets and information that I think can make you a more profitable player. Jeff says Gainwell is going to eat today. Also, Jalen Hurts rushing yards over. Okay, cool. Yeah, we talked a little bit about both of those players. Hayden says pick two: Landry, Raymond, Deontay Johnson, P. Ryan, or Hilton for PPR. Well, I'm definitely liking, I don't know if that's David Johnson or Deontay Johnson. I think both are kind of good plays. If that's Deontay Johnson, that's a lock. You have to play him. Raymond is kind of starting to emerge as the number one receiver for the Detroit Lions. If I'm talking about the right guy, if we're talking about the right guy. Landry, I don't know. I'm not big on the Cleveland Browns passing game really ever, but especially today with Baker Mayfield being a little bit beat up. T.Y. Hilton, I think T.Y. Hilton's coming off of an injury, right? So I don't know if he's going to be 100%. There's a lot of different guys in that offense. If you're looking at like their tight ends, Mo Alley Cox, if you're looking at their receiving core, Michael Pittman, obviously, you got Pascal, you've got, Hilton. So there's a lot of mouths to feed in that offense. And I think they're more of a run first team anyway. So I wouldn't expect a huge game out of T.Y. Hilton in his first game back. Darren says, do you think Atlanta will use Cordero more for rushing or receiving? Both. Dude's been a beast. He's getting more snaps in practice from what I'm reading than Mike Davis. So Mac Jones over 237.5 passing yards. That's a good one. We'll make that the last one, guys. Then I'm going to jump off stream here, go try and lock in some winning entries. We need that big entry energy in chat today. I hope you guys found some value from today's live stream. Had a few glitches, little technical difficulties here or there, but not a big deal, right? So in his last 5 games, he's gone over in 3 out of 5. Today, the New England Patriots are taking on the Los Angeles Chargers. I do kind of expect this one to be one where maybe the Patriots have to pass a bit more than normal. If the Chargers do what they do, they've got a high-powered offense and they're able to put some points up on the board, then New England can't turn over to the running game. But let me get you a projection on those passing yards real quick for Mac Jones, and then we'll wrap things up. I've got Mac Jones at 276 passing yards. So that puts him well over 237.5 by about 40 yards today. So hopefully that helps you out. Mahomes over rushing yards, that's a lock. Yeah, take the Mahomes over rushing yards. If he's under 20 rushing yards, I think you keep clicking the over on Patrick Mahomes. Thank you for that last minute question, Zach. I appreciate all you guys for tuning in. Please make sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on. Like this video if you found any value out of it. I'll be back tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Eastern time to do more of these streams for you. Of course, we'll be talking about NBA basketball, which you guys seem to like a lot more than NFL, according to the poll that I put up on YouTube. So we'll be back at it tomorrow with an NBA stream at 11 a.m., looking at props.cash, looking at PrizePicks. And if you don't play on PrizePicks yet, 100% instant deposit match is waiting for you. You just got to go to prizepicks.com, use promo code Curry to take advantage of that deal today. Thank you guys. You're such a blessing to me. I love having you guys in stream. I love being able to help you guys and give back to everyone who joins these. So we're going to keep doing it until you guys don't show up anymore. But I love you guys. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Zebo. We'll catch you in the next one, brother. Peace.